Good evening, and we'll call to order the Thursday, October 26, 2023 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance, please. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, no additions, no deletions. We'll start with approval of the minutes of the September 28th, 2023 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are passed. So we have 3 agenda items tonight and 1 public hearing. The first agenda item is an agenda item that is on consent, so I'll read it into the record and see if anyone wants to, at that point, open it up for discussion. And it's Paw Prints of Vero Beach. It's a request to change an administrative permit condition for the Paw Prints Dog Grooming and Training Establishment to increase the number of permitted overnight animals from 85 to 125. Paw Prints of Vero Beach Incorporated is the owner. C. Douglas Bitunik Esquire is the agent. The project site is located at 7900 12th Street. So this is on consent. Do we want to open it for discussion?
Is there a motion to pull it off consent? I mean, normally with a consent agenda item, if someone has a question or something like that, they would move to pull it off consent.
Yep.
If there are no motions made by the board members here, you would open it up to the public to see if any member of the public would like to pull it off consent, and if not, just go ahead and vote.
Any commissioners want to pull it off? No?
Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Anyone from the public want to pull it off? Okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good enough.
Well done.
So we've got 2 items that are not on consent. And so the first is CubeSmart 19th Lane, and it is a request for a major site plan and administrative permit use approval for a self-storage facility. TSO Vero Beach Self-Storage LP is the owner. Mills Short and Associated the agents. The project site is located on the south side of 19th Lane, immediately north of the Vero Beach outlets. The zoning is CG, General Commercial. Land use designation is CI, Commercial Industrial. Any declaration of ex parte communication? None. And so I think at this point, we've got this and one other one, and then the public hearing. I think we'll go ahead and swear in anyone who wishes to speak on any of these issues, including the public hearing. Please get sworn in. Stand and get sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Very good. So we'll start with the staff presentation for the CubeSmart 19th Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick Murphy, Senior Planner, will present this item. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Patrick Murphy, Senior Planner with Planning and Development Services. We have CubeSmart here tonight, and the first slide is a location map up on the screens. The site's located within the red polygon there. It's basically at the southwest corner of I-95 and State Road 60. It is just north of the Vero Outlets Mall. This is the site laid on an aerial, so you can see how it lays within the existing development. To the north is the Holiday Inn Express and a Cracker Barrel, and sort of to the northeast is the Hampton Inn Hotel. To the south is the Vero Beach Outlets. Site plan, it's a proposed 3-story building, going to be at 9425 19th Lane. There are 42 covered RV storage units within this project. You can see that there's a very wide drive aisle in between for maneuverability of such large vehicles. The site meets the minimum parking criteria on the north side of the building, and they have 2 entrances and exits. Traffic circulation plan, there's a full access driveway on the north, allows full movements in and out, an exit-only driveway to the east side of the site. Both will be gated and fenced to allow only access to the parking lot for those that are actually storing vehicles there. There will be full access to the building for anyone who wants to come and lease out units. The loading zones, there's one to the north of the building, right up against where the main entrance is. That's for smaller moving trucks or vans or trucks of a personal nature. To the east are the larger loading zones. If you have like a rental van or van lines, that's where easy access to get in and out of that project. Stormwater plan, there's designed to be a dry stormwater pond on the west side of the building. The little light blue lines you see are the underground drain lines that will carry the stormwater to the pond. In times of heavy rainfall during the summer, in the very northwest corner of the dry pond, you'll see a little green square. That's the control structure that allows for the water to overflow if it ever gets to that point, and then it leads to an existing manhole in the middle of 19th Lane. Landscape plan, all along 19th Lane is going to be a 25-foot wide Type B buffer. Along the south side is a 20-foot Type C buffer. They've saved several existing trees. At the southeast corner is a stand of mature pines that they've saved and a few palms throughout. Along the northern side of the building, western side of the building, and even in the southern side of the building is where all the foundation plantings are going to be kept. As you know, this is in a corridor. Foundation plantings are required at all buildings, but in a storage facility with roll-up doors and major access, we allow them to sort of congregate those trees in the best location, so it helps screen the flatter face of the building. All the non-vehicular open space trees are all located around the dry pond to the west of the site. Improvements and conditions, as stated, this is in the State Road 60 corridor overlay plan, so it was required to meet all of the color design and roof design of the State Road 60 corridor. It has been reviewed and staff has approved those designs. In addition, self-storage facilities in the CG zoning district should adhere to the specific land use criteria which are outlined in the staff report. There are 8 specific criteria that apply to self-storage facilities, and it has met all of those criteria. Even so much as there was a little bit of property that they had to peel off to make this a maximum 3 acres, which is the maximum size property in a CG district for self-storage. So it's met all of the criteria. With that, staff recommendation, staff recommends that the PZC approve the major site plan and administrative site plan or permit use for CubeSmart 19th Lane with the conditions listed in the staff report. Those conditions are that the developer shall install all required perimeter buffers and landscape improvements, all required on-site infrastructure improvements, and all required lighting improvements. Be happy to answer any questions the commission may have. The applicant's representative is in attendance.
Thank you, Patrick. So we'll start with commissioner questions. We'll start on my left. Any questions on my left? Mark?
To get my bearings here, I don't hang out on the porch at Cracker Barrel very much, but could you point out where the old McDonald's was?
So the old McDonald's was
and
directly to the north of the site, just to the west of the Holiday Inn Express.
So if you see the cursor, it would be, that's the loop of the drive-through in the very north.
Oh, okay, and
This one might help.
what's there now? Nothing?
Yeah, it's vacant, correct, it's vacant today.
Thank you.
And the far west end is also vacant.
You good, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, any questions on the right? Go ahead, Beth.
Yes, then, under traffic circulation, it states that there is no traffic impact study required because of the 400 average daily trips, or below the 400.
Correct.
How do you integrate existing traffic to calculate those numbers, or do you?
So when the traffic division takes a look at these types of projects, there is an ITE chip generation manual that they use, and you have specific uses that are already called out within the manual, and it has a certain amount of trips that usually are running to and from these types of facilities overall. They look at the size of the facility, and that can generate how many trips they're expecting to come to and from each facility. A self-storage facility overall is sort of a low generating traffic. You mostly see that on the weekends which are outside your AM, PM peaks during the week. So these types of facilities here, while they may be sort of a larger looking facility, the amount of traffic it creates is really negligible in terms of the existing road network.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have one question real quick. The area that you dedicated back to, looks like the Vero Beach outlets, has that been accepted by them?
Yes, yes.
It has, already.
Needed, combined, they happen to be the same entity. TSO is Simon
Gotcha.
organization.
Thank you.
So yes, it's been fully deeded and made a part thereof.
Yeah, it actually shows up currently on the Indian River County Property Appraiser's website. They've already done the lot reconfiguration.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
One question?
Anyone else? Oh, so we'll go ahead and open this up for anyone from the public who would like to comment on this. Anyone? Seeing none, any additional commissioner questions? Mark?
I had one more. I don't assume that in the covered RV storage, anybody be able to use those RVs other than coming and going? Is that right?
That's correct. There's a provision about anyone wanting to live in it or use it or camp out in it. That's just dead storage of those units, of those vehicles, excuse me.
Okay.
We good? Call for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the staff's recommendations and conditions.
A motion to approve? Second. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Our second non-public hearing agenda item is Supermix Ready Mix Concrete Plant. And this is a request for a major site plan approval for Supermix Ready Mix Concrete Plant. It's 2980 Industrial Boulevard LLC is the owner. Mills Short and Associates LLC, the agent. It's located on the south side of 53rd Street, immediately west of 29th Court. Zoning is IG General Industrial, land use designation is CI Commercial Industrial. Declaration of ex parte communications? None, and everyone's been sworn in, so staff presentation, please.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Before you today is the Supermix Ready Mix Concrete Facility Major Site Plan. The project is located south of 53rd Street and west of 29th Court. The zoning is IG General Industrial. This is just an aerial of the site to give you an idea of how the site will be laid out along with its surrounding environment. Site plan is going to call for 31 parking spaces in the parking area. There's going to be a 1,200 square foot office building, single story. There's also a handicap parking space associated with that building as well. The majority of the site is going to be the proposed processing plant, and there's also going to be proposed material storage on the south and west portion of the site. This is also going to be a two-phased project, so everything that you see, including the processing plant north, is going to be phase one. Everything south of the processing plant, where you see that dotted line, is going to be phase two of the project. Traffic circulation is just a simple connection to 29th Court. There's also going to be a connection to the parking lot area, and then there's going to be a connection to the processing area as well. There's going to be one master stormwater pond for the project. It's going to be located in the northwest corner of the development. Landscape plan is going to call for a 20-foot thoroughfare plan roadway buffer along the 53rd Street frontage of the project. The buffer is then going to transition to a 15-foot local roadway buffer along the 29th Court portion of the development. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the major site plan for the Supermix Ready Mix Concrete Facility with the conditions in the staff report. The conditions are related to the payment of the required fee in lieu for tree mitigation or providing replacement trees. This will be verified by environmental planning at the time of building permit. They have to install all required perimeter buffers and landscape improvements, install all required on-site infrastructure improvements, and then finally, once the operation gets going, any sightline adjustments that would be needed would be coordinated with staff as well. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brandon. Commissioner questions, we'll start on the right. None on the right, left?
I just have one, Mr. Chairman. Is the only ingress egress going to be onto 53rd? Will they be able to go the back way to Industrial Boulevard?
In theory, they could go Industrial Boulevard the back way, but the bulk of the traffic will be to 53rd.
Okay. I mean, if.
It snakes around.
If you run into problems later, you can always put signage up that would prevent them from going that way.
Correct.
Thank you.
Chip, do you have any questions for this? Nope. Okay, I'll go ahead and open the floor for public comment, if anyone would like to comment on this. Seeing none, any additional commissioner questions? None, so I'll call for a motion.
I'll move to approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
Move to approve, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, that might be a record for approval of a batch plant project.
Congratulations.
I'm sure you're correct. All right, the final issue is a public hearing, and that is Windsor North Village PD. And this is a request to rezone approximately 52.96 acres from A1 Agricultural 1 and RS3 Residential Single Family to PD Plan Development and obtain concurrent conceptual PD plan and preliminary PD plan and plat approval for a project to be known as Windsor North Village PD. The purpose of this request is to secure a development approval which allows construction of a maximum of 40 single-family units, 6 multifamily units, a fitness center, and a staff parking area. Windsor Properties Incorporated is the owner, MBV Engineering Incorporated is the agent. It is located between Highway A1A and Jungle Trail, immediately north of the existing Windsor PD development. Zoning designations, A1 Agricultural 1 and RS3 Residential Single Family. Land use designation is L1 Low Density Regulation, Residential 1. Density of 0.87 units per acre. Declaration of ex parte communications? None. Everyone who wants to speak on this should have been sworn in. So staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Ryan Sweeney, Assistant Planning and Development Services Director. Did finally drop the interim. And I'll apologize ahead of time. I'm 100% healthy, but I do have somewhat of a frog in my throat, so if my voice goes dry, just bear with me. But with that being said, it is the Windsor North Village Plan Development, PD rezoning, conceptual PD plan, and preliminary PD plan plat. A brief slide on the plan development rezoning process. The first step in the process is the PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan, which requires a public hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission with a recommendation to the board, and then a second public hearing at the Board of County Commissioners for final approval. They are also requesting concurrent preliminary PD plan approval, which would be, of course, subject to approval by the board for conceptual. After that, the applicant or developer would need to obtain a land development permit that's issued by staff, and then ultimately come back to the BCC, typically as a consent item for the final plat, which is really just a legal document at that point. Again, the project site's located between Highway A1A and Jungle Trail, immediately north of what I'll probably most often refer to as Windsor proper, or the existing Windsor PD project, and this is Windsor North Village. And you will talk more about the two strips that connect to A1A. Here's an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site with the proposed development layout laid over top. A quick summary, even though we kind of mentioned it in our item. The existing Windsor PD project was approved back by the BCC back in 1990 and is by and large built out. This project is designed as an expansion or an extension of Windsor. It will be part of the master Windsor HOA. It will be subject to the Windsor covenants, and it will also be subject to the Windsor Code, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. The project site is 52.96 acres. The project consists of 40 single-family lots, 6 multifamily units, which is a 2 3-unit townhome type or condo building, fitness center, which will be shared amongst both Windsor North as well as Windsor proper, the staff parking area, which we'll talk more about. And I do want to point out, I didn't mention in the staff report, but just verbally explain that this project has been a long time coming. There's been a number of different iterations and different attempts, so to speak. So, in fact, when we get here to the conceptual plan, originally the developer proposed to kind of split the two and do the residential development as one plan, and the clubhouse and the parking area. They actually had the clubhouse in the southeastern area as a separate project, but through coordination with the applicant and the surrounding property owners, we said, hey, this needs to be one comprehensive project and be all approved at once. With that, again, it's 1 through 34 single-family lots around the pond, the 2 townhome future Phase 2 buildings, the fitness center building footprint. There are 6 single-family lots along the southeast side, and then the staff parking area. Again, we'll talk more about in a minute. The proposed PD waivers for the project. So most of the project site is actually zoned A1, but we recognize that as a placeholder zoning until such time as it comes in for development. The portion, the 2, what I call the strip parcels, those are RS3, but the entire site has an L1 land use. So under a conventional or under a normal development proposal, the applicant basically would have a pretty easy time coming in to rezone just to RS3, and they could develop at the conventional RS3 zoning. So I provided the A1 for reference, but really the RS3 is more accurate as to what is really allowed. And when you look at the waivers, the first 2, the lot size reduction is very minimal, pretty close to what the RS3 standards required, and the lot width reduction is also very minimal as well. Zero setbacks. On its face sounds shocking, but when you look at Windsor and when you look at the Windsor Code, it's a completely different design than conventional zoning, or even what we see a lot of PDs with these big national home builders where they're trying to do sort of the cookie cutter 50-foot wide lots with the 5-foot setbacks, and this is entirely different. The Windsor Code, which we can talk a little bit more about later as well, is like 6 volumes. It's got everything for building materials, building colors, window placement, roof design, build to lines, overhangs. So it's very unique and very different. So that being said, the 0 setbacks, there still are setbacks, there's still relief. It's just much different than your conventional development. The traffic circulation plan, by and large, the main entrance will be an existing service entrance that is known as Ocean Run Lane. That's a gated entrance. It's already in place. It will be repaved and reconfigured through development. They're also proposing a new driveway to the north, private gated resident only here at the north end, and that will be served by both southbound right and northbound left turn lanes, and both of those turn lanes will extend to serve 110th Place, which is the Wabasso Estates subdivision as well. And then there's also several internal, both existing as well as new internal roadway connections. So residents of Windsor proper can come into Windsor North and utilize the fitness center. And if they really wanted to, if they wanted to avoid getting out on the A1A, they could, in theory, go up to the northern driveway. I don't foresee them snaking through. Conversely, residents of Windsor North can get down into Windsor proper to go to the clubhouse, the golf course, things of that nature. In theory, they could also snake through the neighborhood to go out a southern driveway, but I don't foresee that unless there was an accident or something they're trying to avoid. The conceptual stormwater plan includes a sort of a 2-stage enhanced stormwater system with the freshwater pond, which is basically sized for what they would need to handle a typical development of this size, and then a whole secondary treatment system, which is a saltwater estuary, tidally connected to the river, so it will flush during tidal episodes, and then during peak rain events, the water will outfall into the saltwater estuary, which basically dilutes the shock to freshwater dumping into the river, and then in extreme events, it will outfall back into the river, but it'd be considerably different than just flushing fresh water into the lagoon. Conceptual landscape plan provides a typical 25-foot type B buffer around most of the perimeter of the hole in the donut, if you will. But then along the north end, there's also an 8-foot tall solid masonry wall along what would be the north or rear lots of the Wabasso Estates lots. I believe there's 4 or 5 lots that abut this new roadway. Along the south end, in the area where the proposed staff parking area is, there's a 50-foot wide tree preservation area, as well as an 8-foot block wall on the other side between the parking area and the homes. This little gap here is actually an area where they're gonna pluck a couple existing trees that they want to relocate into the site, so that's gonna be a replanted area. So most of that buffer is gonna stay in its current state, but they are gonna have to replant a very narrow section there as well. And then we have, along the north, we have a 25-foot minimum. The width varies, it actually gets wider in spots, is a tree preservation buffer area between the roadway and the Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge. And then the western, I called it half, but it's really 2/3, is this 25-foot maritime hammock planting that they've coordinated with Pelican Island. There's no specific landscape buffer easement along Jungle Trail. They've designed to have the estuary and a lot of soft green space improvements along that buffer, but there is a 30-foot buffer easement requirement per the Jungle Trail Management Plan, and we can also talk a little bit about that more later. And then there's, of course, no buffer to the south because they're interconnecting to Windsor. Environmental and archaeological issues. There is a small 0.65 acre wetland. It's not an actual wetland, it's a reestablished wetland from when it was an old grove furrow, but it does meet the plant materials and hydrological type. So it'll be mitigated on site through the estuary and some of the plantings in the freshwater pond. Tree protection and mitigation, again, this was an old grove, but it was a grove many, many years ago, so some trees have reestablished themselves, and there's some trees that are being relocated, some that are being protected, but of course there will be some that will be removed, and anything that qualifies for mitigation will be mitigated. Archaeological resources, this is a site along Jungle Trail that's been identified as being an area that has a higher likelihood of having archaeological artifacts on site. They've done both a phase 1 and phase 2 survey, but they have not gotten an official letter from Florida Department of State Division of Historical Resources, DHR, so they will be required to get a DHR concurrence letter prior to LDP. The Jungle Trail Management Plan, again, this project has about, I believe it's 1,400 linear feet of frontage along the Jungle Trail, so they are entirely subject to the Jungle Trail Management Plan. Part of that, they are going to propose a 10-foot limited access easement, which will prohibit any vehicular access. They're not proposing any vehicular access. They do have a very small non-motorized connection at the south end for a potential dock that's not been permitted yet, but will be subject to all the Jungle Trail Management Plan requirements, and then again, the 30-foot buffer easement that I mentioned as well. And then lastly, Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge to the north. I identified some of the items that they've agreed to partner with the refuge on, and they've been in close contact with their staff as well. Required improvements and other conditions. So they've got their typical required improvements, an internal sidewalk / pedestrian system. A lot of times with PDs, we don't necessarily see the traditional 5-foot wide sidewalk, but we see a modified system. They've got a ton of walking trails and interconnections, so we call it a pedestrian system. Street lighting, of course, they're required to have street lighting. They're going to utilize the same street lighting that they have in Windsor proper, which is like a low-level kind of, almost like, it's hard to explain, but it's unique to the Windsor design. Green space and recreation areas, they far exceed, I think they're over by like 20% of what they're required. They have a ton of open space, the estuary, walking trails, the fitness center, all of those are considered to be recreation areas. The North Barrier Island Corridor regulations, the project site is in the North Barrier Island Corridor and subject to. Those regulations are by and large for building architecture and colors and what have you. The Windsor Code far exceeds the minimums of what's required in the North Barrier Island Corridor, but there are some other minor site-related items that are subject to. Windsor Code requirements, again, being a part of the master Windsor HOA, they are going to be subject to the Windsor Code, which again is far over and above anything we would ever think of requiring. And the Ocean Way subdivision plat, I'll back up real quick. This eastern area is currently platted as the Ocean Way subdivision. It's a, I believe, a 12-lot platted conventional subdivision that Windsor owns entirely. So in order to develop this proposed plan, they are going to have to, they will have to vacate that plat. That's a, plat vacation is a pretty rare thing, Bill. I think we've only done 1 or 2 in the past, 10 or 12 years, but they will, that requires a public hearing by the board in order to vacate that plat. And then it'll be replatted when they redevelop. Neighborhood interest in town hall meeting, I'm sure you can tell by the number of folks that are in the crowd that surrounding property owners have been involved from the start, even from the different iterations. I think we have an email group of 20 or 30 folks that, we regularly provide the information, and they called into the tier. I think a lot of this was kind of started during COVID, so they called in during the meetings. Some have certainly expressed their opposition or concerns with the project. Others are kind of a little bit so-so. I do think, and I can't speak for them, but I do think they appreciate the effort staff has made to get the buffers and especially the walls that we've pushed for, and we've also tweaked the design. The staff parking area at one point was closer to like 120 spaces, and now it's down to 67. The Windsor Developer Group hosted a town hall meeting with the surrounding property owners back over 2 years ago, October 7th, 2021. It was attended by, I'd say, venture 30 surrounding property owners. At the time, that specific meeting was actually about the proposal to do the Windsor, or to do the fitness center in the parking area along that southern area. Ultimately, we've gone a different direction, but they have been in communication this entire time. Public benefits. So the man-made estuary and enhanced stormwater treatment, again, the estuary itself is a natural habitat, or a man-made habitat, but for, native flora and fauna to either forage in or just for plants to grow in, but also that treatment or pre-treatment before it goes back to the river, and the tidal connection with the river is certainly far over and above what we would see in a typical development, especially on the island. That's a good thing. Their partnership with the Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge, the physical improvements that they agreed upon, as well as there's some operational things that, Pelican Island wanted them to make their future residents aware that they do control burns, they do have critters that, are there, and that they're here first, and they're a wildlife refuge. So they've been in close contact with them. And then lastly, the northbound and southbound turn lanes on Highway O&A. I explained that per our requirements, those lanes technically would not be required. Strictly from a turning movement based on design speed, they would not be required. DOT is requiring them as a safety improvement for the general area because there's a number of driveway cuts up there, and people do tend to travel somewhat faster up there the further north you get. But those turn lanes will also serve 110th place. So albeit it's only, I believe, 10 lots, those 10 lots will also have the advantage of that turn lane. So staff's recommendations that the P&Z recommend that the BCC approve the PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan for Windsor North Village with conditions listed in staff's report. And that includes the wetlands permit by staff, vacating the Ocean Way plat, subdivision plat, Florida Department of State DHR concurrence letter, Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge permits and approvals, jungle trail management plan, buffer easement and compliance items, final landscape street lighting, tree protection plans, which is typical with LDP. We have specifically built in a condition to construct the 8-foot tall walls as early as possible with phase 1. So as soon as they clear, we would like for them to pull those building permits individually and construct those walls so that as soon as those walls are up, that will also help shield the remaining construction activity as well. And then the planting will come in after the fact because that's usually done at the end. But the sooner we get those solid barriers up, the better noise protection they'll have. And the highway A1A turn lane requirement prior to CFC. And with that, that's staff's recommendation. And I'm gonna drink some water for a second. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with commissioner questions to staff, and I guess you're it for staff. So start on the left. Mark?
I've never been exposed to 0 setbacks or 0 open space. And if you could just give me a quick little tutorial how that works and why they want that.
Right, so again, it's not really truly zero. First of all, they're not building edge to edge. They need the flexibility to be able to create, I've got an image, I probably should have done a better lot fit diagram, but you can see to the south here, the existing Windsor. You know, they bring portions of the structure to the front, to the roadway to create sort of more of a city-town feel. But they have, every one of them has sort of a courtyard design where there's still open areas internal, and then oftentimes, in this case, in the rear as well. But they have, you know, a front, a building pushed to one side, but the other side's open, and then maybe another principal or accessory structure in the rear. So the reality of it is it's not zero and it's not 100% lot coverage. It's just they have the flexibility to locate those buildings anywhere within the lot. The other thing is it's 0% open space only on the lot. The overall project open space is 56%, which is far exceeds the 40% which is required.
Well, I understand that, but I don't understand why zero on the lot. It seems like you're going, as you said, you're going to have some. I just wonder why there isn't some kind of a minimum.
Right, again, so this is just a portion of it. The Windsor Town Code has a whole chapter strictly on building placement and when you can locate a principal structure or an accessory or a breezeway or, so there's a lot that goes into it that's far over and above what county staff would ever even want venture to get into because there's no way we could do it staff-wise. But at the end of the day, they have to have the flexibility to be able to locate those buildings around, within the individual lots. Anything else?
Todd?
Not right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything to the right? Beth, go ahead.
Well, I have a couple of questions. The first one, can you describe, and maybe it's for the applicant, Ryan, but I am really interested in the man-made estuary. Can you give us a little more detail on what that means, what that is?
I'll defer to the applicant, which includes the engineer.
Okay, fair enough. I understand that. The other area that caught my attention was when you talked about the archaeological resources, there was a staff review and then a state review?
Right, so when we have a countywide survey, albeit from the 90s, but when you're talking about archaeological artifacts that are thousands of years old, that indicates portions of the county that are higher likely to potentially have archaeological artifacts. It doesn't mean they do or they don't, but based on some of these old trails from, you guys know Vero Man 10,000 years ago, the site may or may not have archaeological artifacts, but a lot of times they're not going to be uncovered until they start digging or excavating.
Is there a history in that location?
It's a very broad swath, so it's really hard to pinpoint and say, yes, this site is, but what happens is, so a phase 1 archaeological survey and phase 2, they do transects and they take samples, and if they find something, then they dig further, both literally and figuratively, they dig in further. They've done the phase 1 and phase 2. Neither of them really resulted in anything of substance, but the way that the DHR functions, they still have to make a final ruling. And then, of course, they also have to still be aware that when they do start excavating, if they come across something, then everything halts and there it goes. But we've had a number of these sites, even most recently, a few that are in that area, but it didn't result in anything.
Okay. In terms of the dock and kayak launch,
Yes.
are there additional permitting requirements?
Absolutely, yeah, that's purely conceptual. That would all be DEP, perhaps Army Corps, the list goes on, and of course, Jungle Trail Management Plan, but that's just a conceptual location at this point. That part is not being permitted or approved under this approval.
And then just a comment, I really appreciated the partnership with Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge. I think that's.
That was on the developer. That was wise of them to go that path.
That's all I had.
Any?
I just have a couple of questions, and once again, this may fall to the developer with the estuary and those kinds of things. But has St. John's done their study, and have they signed off on all of this and this procedure?
We're nowhere near that yet.
Nowhere
yeah.
near that
This is-
yet.
You gotta get approved at the conceptual level, and then they'll dig in at LDP for St. John's permitting. And
Because it looks very new type of
Sure.
way to do things, and that's why I was wondering if they had, if
They
they had
may have
been in
done-
touch yet, so we'll ask them, I guess.
Excuse me, yeah, they may have done some preliminary discussions to make sure, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking, and, but beyond that, I don't believe they're done, there's no formal permitting.
Okay, I'll ask those questions then. No further.
Anything else? I have a couple. One is, when was the land for the proposed development purchased?
I'd also defer that to the applicant. I do know that the land has been owned by an entity called Tor West, which was a subsidiary of Windsor for quite some time. It only more recently, within the past few years, was deeded over to Windsor Properties, Inc. But as far as I know, I believe Tor West purchased from Premier Citrus back in the early 2000s, give or take. I'll let the applicant confirm, but they've owned and held the property for, I think, at least 20 years, including those subdivided lots as well.
And how long has the proposed project been discussed? How long have we known that it was coming?
Started around 2019, but again, there was several different iterations that have stopped and start. This current proposal started about a year ago. But it's been in the work. The idea of developing the property has been in the works at least since even prior to COVID, I believe 2019.
The only thing missing for the archaeological study is the final state report.
Correct.
Is there any conceivable way that a state report or a finding when they break ground would shut this project
Yeah,
down?
absolutely. If they come across an artifact, they stop, and then depending on the extent of what it is, if you see a skull, you freak out, but if it's a skull from 80 years ago, then it's not an issue. If it's a skull from 10,000 years ago, then the project is dead.
So basically what happens is that they stop, archaeologists come in, they deal with it.
Correct.
They excavate it, clean it up,
Carbonate it,
and then project starts up again.
Again, depending on the extent. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's an entire burial ground, then the thing might be a national landmark, but
Yeah.
it's just hard to say.
Yeah. Okay, so would the applicant like to make a report or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Barquette. I practice at 756 Beachland Boulevard, and we actually don't have a presentation to make, but I do have Mark Justice here, who's Vice President of Windsor Properties, that can probably answer some of the questions that were posed earlier. And MBV is also here that if for the engineering aspect, if there are any questions, but we don't have a formal presentation. We, of course, support the staff recommendation. But I'd like to introduce Mark. I think he has a few things to, I'd like to introduce Mark Justice to.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Mark Justice, 3125 Windsor Boulevard. Thank you for hearing our project today. Wanted to answer some of the questions that I heard there a few minutes ago. I can go back to the first one, the zero setbacks. Hopefully I can shed a little light on that. As Ryan mentioned, the architecture in Windsor is fairly unique. The reason for the zero setbacks is that the building placement standards that are in the Windsor Code require that certain elements of a building address a property line in a certain way. And it's done for visual interest, it's done for historical accuracy in terms of the architecture. I'm not an architect, I can't claim to be an expert on the subject, but that's the purpose of that. The actual building coverage ends up being about 35–40% of the lot. So the code doesn't mandate that coverage. The requirements end up forcing that limit on the coverage, if you follow what I mean. So if you're following the Windsor Code the way that you're supposed to in the building placement standards, then you end up with a house that is generally, or a footprint, let's say, that's generally around that percentage. So I hope that answers that part of the question. For the estuary, the purpose of the estuary, Our landscape designer has come up with a concept of a completely native landscape concept to restore, the hammock that was probably there at one time. We're using, everything native: oak trees, sable palms, saw palmetto, wild coffee, plant material like that. And they've established 2 plant communities and animal communities on the property. The freshwater lake is the one on the east, and that's the main stormwater lake. And so that's one type of plant community. And then you have the estuary, which is designed to encourage wildlife that's found in the lagoon into the property. And the connections to the lagoon allow for that tidal flushing and the treatment of the water, and which these guys can talk about much better than I can, but essentially treated in the freshwater lake and then discharged to the estuary after it's treated and out to the lagoon. And so that's the purpose of that. The DHR approval, the archaeological studies, we had a phase 1 study done on the entire site that was cleared. We recently completed a phase 2 on the western, I'd say 25% of the site that was required. The archaeologist found no significant cultural resources. The state, Ryan doesn't know this yet, we've just received a letter from the state that clears the project to move forward, and that letter will be submitted with the LDP application. So, and then finally, land was purchased 98 or 99, it was just prior to me arriving there, so I think that's accurate. And as well as the southeastern portion along just south of Turtle Cove. So.
Good. One question, is the Windsor Code stricter than the Indian River County Code?
Well, it's an aesthetic code, so it's not a building code. Obviously you still have to go through the building department for the building. The answer is yes. Yes, much stricter according to Bruce. So.
Commissioners, any questions on the right? Any questions on the left?
Just out of curiosity, at the original, at the time of the original Windsor development, were there any archaeological findings run into?
That goes way back to 1990, far before my arrival there, but I don't believe there were. There was an archaeological site, a known registered site that goes along Jungle Trail, and I believe that the studies that were performed prior to this project did not find anything significant there as well. In fact, Pelican Island also had studies done north of our boundary, and they found the same thing.
Both to the north and the south?
Correct, yeah.
Hasn't been anything that anybody knows of?
No, and then the section in the middle connecting the two also didn't find any resources at all.
Any other questions?
That was previously a grove area?
Correct,
Is that
yeah.
correct?
Right.
Well, that's going to have disturbed,
Yeah,
I think things would have been found during that time. Had something
Possibly,
been
yeah.
there, possibly been there, but having been grove,
it was farmed for decades. Yeah, it was there for quite a long time. In
Okay.
fact, going from Pelican Island all the way down to 510, or actually south of that. So,
yeah, it was all grove.
That's the purpose of Jungle Trail, is trucks ran up and down.
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, I'm about to open the public hearing, and I've got a couple of requests. There are 2 podiums. Please, if you have something to say, please come to either one of them. State your name, and if your name is more complex than Smith, please spell it, and state your address. Please keep your comments focused, and also if somebody else has made the point that you want to make, we don't have to hear that 10 times. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
I got your
Thanks, Ron.
presentation pulled up if you
I'll
like.
just tell you to switch slides.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Good evening, I'm Ron Shelley. I live at 3485 Mariners Way, Vero Beach, president of the Turtle Cove Homeowners Association, and I represent the 21 members of the association. Following speakers will be representing a much larger constituency of the North Barrier Island. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. This has been a long process, and we appreciate the staff's hard work. We're here tonight to object to the rezoning of Ocean Run Way, which is the lower portion below Turtle Cove. Every homeowner expects the government to ensure codes and ordinances are enforced. Every homeowner in this room, every one of us, wants to protect their home from commercial encroachment. No one here would want a commercial parking lot, and all that comes with it, 50 feet from our home. 50 feet is about the width of this room. That being said, the residents of the North Beach Island take the position that Windsor's failed to produce a plan that adheres to the North Barrier Island Corridor Ordinance. We oppose any rezoning and concept that includes equipment storage, commercial parking lot, Airbnb, and a fitness center. Slide, please. This graphic shows the proposed equipment storage, which is on the eastern side of the parking lot, was failed to be addressed before. The maintenance staff parking, which is the whole parking lot, the proposed townhouses, and the fitness center and parking. And this is the portion I'd like to concentrate on. Slide. So we have 5 major issues with this. The proposed use is inconsistent and incompatible with the Indian River County's own established ordinances and comprehensive plan. The long history of code violations with selective or no enforcement, even after acknowledgement of the violations. Windsor's using misleading verbiage in the proposed regarding staff, parking, and maintenance, and the commercial activity has an ongoing negative impact on use and quiet enjoyment of our homes. The close proximity of commercial activity and/or the commercial parking lot has detrimental and potentially fatal effect on insurability of Turtle Cove properties. So I'm going to show you that the rezoning and conceptual plan is inconsistent with the surrounding area. And I'm going to refer to the North Barrier Island Corridor Ordinance and Chapter 2 of the future land use element of the county's comprehensive plan. So the first few points of Ordinance 9/11/20 clearly support not allowing this rezoning. Chapter 2 of the comprehensive plan specifically talks to the Barrier Island area and outlines not allowing uses that are incompatible or negatively affects the surrounding areas. I think staff may have concentrated more on the site design than the overall purpose and intent of the ordinance. Consistency in established ordinance and future land use element must be addressed. We don't disagree with the residential portion of the plans, but what is not consistent with Windsor's conceptual PD plan is the new urbanism design concept requiring a unique system of support and maintenance and services. None of the staff's points speak about this part of the plan. The 50-foot landscape buffer and an 8-foot masonry wall will do little to alleviate the 18-wheeler diesel trucks, the tractors, the assorted commercial noise, smoke, dust, smells, and vibrations of the Windsor activity that Windsor plans for that parking lot. No homeowner would accept this, and none of you would want this in your backyard. Staff reviewed elements of the ordinance like building colors and roof design that are inconsequential to the incompatible land use. If this area is rezoned with conditions, the neighbors of Turtle Cove will have to deal with a lifetime of reduced quality of life. Next slide. So Windsor's new urbanism has resulted in countless code violations and land abuse over the last 20 years. Windsor's land abuse history is a matter of county record as they play whack-a-mole with the code enforcement authorities. Windsor's refusal to obey ordinances and respect the land we all love continues with its most recent fines this week at the Code Enforcement Board. They didn't even bother to attend. Slide. So after it was a citrus grove, this is what it wound up looking like. The aerial photo from the property appraiser's website shows the support required for Windsor's new urbanism. That zero lot line that you were addressing, there's no service vehicles that can get there. This is where it all starts. Windsor's been operating an administrative and commercial landscape and maintenance facility since the land was purchased over 20 years ago. This site also served as Windsor's private landfill. This activity went on without a permit until 2022. It's also agriculturally zoned land, again gaining preferential tax treatment from the county. In 2022, the county staff offered Windsor a way around continuing that activity by issuing a temporary use permit. Most of the administrative activity was moved south along A1A, but the landscape and maintenance, construction, support, private landfill continues to this day. All this support is required for new urbanism. It must move somewhere, and it's going to wind up going on the Ocean Runway portion, identified as equipment storage and staff parking maintenance area. Windsor also used to own the home on the beach just north of Windsor Beachfront Homes, and that was sold in 2020. This home was used for guests such as golf and tennis pros, chefs, and other temporary guests, much like an Airbnb on a grand scale. We think the townhomes that are proposed for the Ocean Runway parcel will likely be used for this purpose. Again, not consistent with the residential compatibility with the surrounding area. The proposed fitness center parking also is not consistent with the surrounding area. If approved into the PD, any changes will be approved through the staff and not need any other board or public input or public hearing approvals. So what if Windsor decides to enlarge the parking area, as was their original plan, or all the proposed townhomes get changed into pickleball courts to support the fitness center? It's important to what we're here for today is for us to understand that what Windsor, by the sleight of hand behind their security gates, may be doing in the future if this plan is approved. Past performance is a good indicator of future results. Next slide. Well, code violations started to be reported since the administrative offices were moved around 2019. As you can see, sometimes the violations were acknowledged by code enforcement, but most of the times they were not. This is also a matter of record. Over the years, code enforcement's leniency allowed Windsor to continue these operations with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. The county's own property appraiser's website has perfectly documented the landfill activities throughout the years with aerial photos. All this is just a few hundred feet from the Indian River Lagoon. Slide. So what equipment storage and staff parking and maintenance is really going to look like? Slide. Every open area of parking that's not adjacent to Windsor Homes has garbage collection cans, dumpsters, compactors. Over the years, the private landfill they've been operating behind our homes has included dumping of Hartrue tennis court materials for their clay courts. That's that first picture on the top in the middle, piles of silica, which has its own warning of disposal. The silica dust is aggravating to the respiratory system, causes eye and skin irritation if not disposed of properly, in accordance with federal, state, and local ordinances. Windsor had no issues with this dumping it right behind our homes in September of 2021. When it was reported to code enforcement, no violations were found. The State Environmental Protection Agency was called, and believe it or not, if no one's reported sick, ill, or a fish kill is found, no action is done. But coincidentally, within the next few days after the state's visit, the site was cleaned up. All this is happening within a few hundred yards of the most diverse estuary and protected land in the country. The county's also participated in illegal dumping behind our homes. That's a county vacuum truck in the top right corner. What they might be dumping 100 feet from our homes is anyone's guess. There's no one to call when Windsor's members has a refrigerated tractor-trailer truck full of his wine collection and they show up in our backyard on Friday night, or when an air compressor accidentally gets left on during a long weekend. These are annoyances that is constant with Windsor's maintenance areas. Slide. So these diesel fuel tanks are constantly moved to support the large construction vehicles, which are constantly present. Piles of trash make perfect home for rodents. Porta potties are also a permanent fixture. The workers used to just use the wood line over our property line. Porta potties will no doubt be a permanent fixture in the proposed parking lot. Next slide. The record reflects Windsor's failures to respond to code enforcement rules and regulations. Next slide. More evidence of Windsor's disregard for land use. Again, refer to Windsor's history of noncompliance. Could code enforcement ever be successful? These are dumpsters, trash compactors in their administrative area off of A1A. Slide. So the proposed area rezoned into PD may not be considered commercial by the county, but the insurance industry operates on different criteria. Slide. COPE is an acronym for a set of conditions that insurance companies use when considering writing a policy. Local homes located within 300 feet of a commercial exposure could be denied a policy. Correspondence, which I have for you if you'd like to read it, from two different insurance agents, one from the HOA and my own personal one, stated with commercial exposure, agencies will not issue a policy. Clearly stated, due to this rezoning, a residential insurance policy can be canceled or not renewed. This will not only affect the existing, but financial and new purchases. If you get dropped from your insurance, you could lose your mortgage. Florida enacted the Burt J. Harris Act for protection, but it doesn't end well for anybody. Next slide. So please consider the surrounding neighbors by voting to not support the approval of the Ocean Runway portion of the proposal. Any public benefits to this plan are strictly for the members of Windsor and their support machine. So please protect our quiet enjoyment, protect our property values, protect our insurability, preserve the unique character of the North Barrier Island, and reject this change request. We're opposed to any concept that includes equipment storage, parking, maintenance, Airbnb, or fitness center. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Shelley?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I have just one. Going back to your 5 major concerns, commercial activity was one. Can you give me, and I understand during construction that being a concern, but once construction is complete, what type of commercial activity?
Sure, they run their lands. There's 3 different companies that run their maintenance out of there. Orchid Island is one, Tucker is another one. I don't have the specific names, but it's a nonstop they're not doing construction in that area now, but that support has been there for 20 years. They need it for their new urbanism design, which doesn't allow work trucks to get into those 0 lot line houses. And the streets are very narrow. And they don't want to disturb the members. So what they do is they pile everything onto golf carts with trailers, utility trailers. So they have all their landscape equipment, the ladders, the maintenance, all of that is on little trailers that weave through the neighborhood.
Thank you.
All of that is staged in that area now.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on this side? So you talked about 18-wheelers. Are there 18-wheelers moving through there?
There's a constant flow of large trucks.
18-wheelers?
18-wheel. We had a few years ago, there was a couple of 18-wheelers that were there for a few months, maybe weeks, that ran constantly refrigerated trucks that had some members' wine collection. And it sat there in that area 100 feet from our home. So yes, those vehicles are constantly there. And I imagine in this new parking lot, there will constantly be there also. When they have their equestrian and polo events, there is going to be tractor trailers that come in with horses from all over the place. If they come in the evening, those drivers are going to be sitting in their trucks with the air conditioning running, with the diesel trucks idling. We have no doubt about that. They do it now.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley.
I have a question then.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Based on that statement,
Yes.
and thank you for giving us your concerns. Ryan, the design of the parking lot that is there, is that designed for residential, just cars? Or is there RV parking? Is there truck parking areas there? Could there be some kind of parking blocks there to keep that from happening in that area so that it's strictly for cars and service members there and that there wouldn't be room for truck parking? Is that something that could be a solution to this issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Votaw, it is designed as a commuter car, pedestrian car lot with diagonal parking. With landscape islands that will break up every, 10 to 20 spaces. There is the ability for a landscape truck and trailer to double park and take up 2 spaces, but I don't foresee it being able to accommodate 18-wheelers based on the design. And the actual final design will be during LDP, but again, it's your typical parking stall, which is about 18.5 feet deep by 10 feet wide.
And so where is this storage facility that you're talking about that they're going to be using for this? If you can point that out to me.
Yeah, if you can see my, actually, let me do this.
Okay.
I don't know if that's good. Oh, you know what? Let me go back. I'm sorry. And
That
so
area
if
to
you
the-
see the little dashed area, this is what they're calling the storage facility. It's about 6,000 square feet, and it will be buffered on all sides, but it's relatively small. I mean, you're not, and the opening is pretty small too. You're not, in theory, you could probably fit a Bobcat or a John Deere Gator, but you're not bringing in a full-size front-end loader or anything like that into there.
So it's 6,000 square feet?
6,000 square feet.
Okay, that's not a very big
That's
area.
not very large.
Okay.
Big enough for dumpsters.
Is,
I have no further.
what's that?
I have no further question. Just-
Is Airbnb frequent in Windsor now? Are there Airbnbs in there?
Yeah, I don't believe so. I mean, by and large, the properties are seasonal, but they're typically just only utilized by their respective owners.
Mark, if you could, do the deed restrictions speak to Airbnb or temporary rentals?
There are rental rules there that do not allow.
Just so they can pick it up on the recording.
There are rules in place in Windsor to prevent short-term rentals. Sometimes owners do rent their property, but they rent it for the season, and it's subject to approval by the club management.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Could you,
Go ahead. Yep.
yeah, I have another question for you. Back to the parking lot and the pictures that were shown. Is this project going to eliminate what exists now with the dumpsters and the landscaping equipment and the whole 9 yards?
Yes, in fact,
Do you need accommodations for this elsewhere?
yes. In fact, the contractors that are using that area now, they're using it under the temporary use permit that's been granted by the county. They're all actually going to vacate the property within the next 30 days. We've decided that, they need to go ahead and find other locations for their operations, which they've done. And so, they'll be out of there. The parking lot that's been designed here is strictly that. It's a parking lot. It's not a landscape staging area. So it'll be paved with asphalt. So it won't be, an area where they can dump things and for later pickup and that kind of thing. So light vehicles will be parked in there. No 18-wheelers will park in there. Of course, an occasional delivery will come through as it would in any subdivision, that's under construction. That's the extent of it.
But the landscaping equipment that we just saw, that's all
Yeah.
being moved somewhere else?
Correct. Correct.
Mark, how many polo events do you guys have each year?
It's not each year. We do it about every other year.
How many what? I'm sorry.
Polo events.
Every
There
other
is
year.
usually, there's probably a little bit more activity that given week.
Yeah, oh, definitely. It's a big production, but there's a separate equestrian center, an equestrian facility, and then horses are brought to that facility. They're not stored, they're not, trailers are not brought into that property. And so they won't park in that parking lot either. They'll go straight to the equestrian facility where the horses are then put in the stables. And then there's an actual parking lot for horse trailers next to that facility.
What number of code violations have you had?
So there have been a few, and certainly some mistakes have been made. The ones that I recall, we had a dumpster left on site that was brought in by a contractor, and that happened a couple of times. Another violation was the temporary use permit expired, and there was a lapse between that and when we had it renewed. Another one had, we were doing some work under another permit. That contractor left his equipment there on site, which is typical. We were informed that he couldn't leave it there because there's a temporary use permit in place on that same property. I spoke with Mr. Sobczak about that, and we agreed that that equipment could remain while that work was being done. You know, every time I think, you know, it's been brought to our attention, we've worked pretty swiftly to correct the violation, and I would hope that, you know, the county staff would agree with that. But once this is cleaned up, we'd like to move forward, get the site developed so that that won't occur anymore, and then the parking lot would be used differently than the property is used today.
Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Mark?
I'm not making excuses for the developer, but, and some of the images we've seen look pretty bad, but would it be true that once this project was completed, those kind of things wouldn't be possible?
It wouldn't be tolerated. I mean, I don't want to speak for Mark, but if you have a developed residential, it's going to be self-policing if they're having trucks and, I mean, if, to this point, there is a narrow buffer separating Ocean Run from Savannah, but all of these homes are directly across from where the parking area will be, so.
And there's no wall to separate that. That will be landscape buffer between, to the south, to the houses to the south.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
And so those residents right along that entranceway, have they posted any complaints or any concerns having that parking lot directly across from them? Are they fully aware of what's going on?
They are. I've met with them personally, and we've discussed the landscape buffer. I've met with several groups, actually, that live along Savannah about different subjects, you know, different parts of the plan. Whenever they have an issue, we discuss it, and we have no major complaints about the project.
Thank you.
If I could clarify, through this process, through the public hearing process, any parcel that is within 300 feet, and that's even if it's 1 foot of the parcel, they are notified by mail. I actually spoke with Mark and I said, hey, we sent out the notice by mail. I haven't heard a peep from any Windsor property owner, so I assume that you guys are in agreement. And of course, the club talks amongst itself, so I can attest that they got the notices and I have not heard anything from them.
Okay, next speaker.
My name is William Farrell, and I live at 10890 A1A, almost directly across the street from the site. And I didn't get a notice, and none of my neighbors on the other side of A1A that I know of got notices, and they asked me to represent them here. I'm also wearing 2 hats. I'm also the president of the North Beach Civic Association, and different members and different people have asked me to come speak tonight about this situation. There's certain things that we have concerns about. This is a mixed-use project, obviously, and it's not in character with the rest of the neighborhood. We try to work with Windsor, but we need to protect our homes. And I've delivered letters to all of you, and I have letters that we could put on the board here to show. But I'd like to go over some of the salient points. We've had terrible problems with this site. Ocean Run, that street was a subdivision. It hasn't been vacated. And Windsor has a sign up, and it's become a commercial use. It says service area right on A1A. And there are 18-wheelers and all kinds of trucks. I'm not trying to be hard on Windsor. I'm not against their developing their other stuff. But I have a real problem, and everybody around there that I've talked to and people with our association, I'm speaking for both, have problems with this parking lot because of the commercial use on that street. And we don't think, there's always been creep. You know, one thing's supposed to happen, but then by the time you turn around and a year later, it changes. And that's not supposed to be used like it is. It's a commercial street. Almost all the traffic is commercial. And obviously it supports that stuff that you saw the pictures of. But it's gonna support all of Windsor, and there are gonna be trucks through there, we think. Well, what I'm concerned about, and it hasn't been spoken to, there could be dumpsters in front, and you know, they're gonna probably widen A1A. I don't think anybody has mentioned that, but there are plans to widen A1A, so they better have their setbacks straight, because I haven't heard anything about that. But I know about that because I have to keep up with that stuff. But I'm really concerned about what's going on here. I don't like that parking lot, and I don't think it's gonna be it says a maintenance and service and something parking lot. I don't think any of the staff is gonna park there. If, you know, here's what I said in a letter. Is it a swan or a duck? What is it? It's gonna be a commercial parking lot. I don't believe in any way, shape, or form it's gonna be residential for staff. It's not, that street's not used that way. It's totally commercial. I don't think it's gonna change. And it's going through that subdivision, which is gonna have to be vacated. So there's a problem there. And we haven't talked about land use. There's no talk about land use. And years ago, the North Beach Civic Association, property owners, worked on land use for the whole North Beach to have 1 acre lots. This is gonna be inconsistent. I haven't heard word one, and I'm not trying to criticize the staff, about land use. But I don't like the way this is going. We're just talking about zoning and what's there. Yeah, there's RS3 there and the agricultural there, but this is a change. This is a significant change, and there's such commercial use there. This is gonna be a commercial parking lot. Our objection for most of the people is about the parking lot situation, because we don't believe it's gonna exist. It's not consistent, it doesn't belong there, and we don't think it's gonna stay that way, and it's gonna be used. Listen, the people that are going into Windsor are using that now. They park over lawns, they're parking everywhere. There's so much, that's used for all the commercial traffic almost in Windsor, and it's wrong. And it's imposing on all the people that live near it. It's a great imposition, and it's a problem. And I'll tell you another example, and I hate to bring this up. I'm not just trying to attack Windsor, but I own the land next door to Windsor, and I didn't get this notice, and I should have. I'm within 300 feet, my property is. Okay, my neighbor didn't get it. He's across the street. He sold him that subdivision. He developed it. He planned it, Andy Machado. He asked me to speak for him tonight. That's why I'm here. And Martin Graff, our other neighbor, nobody heard about this. I don't know what's going on, but we just didn't know anything about this. So we found out the short time I was out of town, they're all out of town. Nobody knew about this hearing. I just got back Sunday, and I found out this was gonna happen a couple of days ago, and somebody called me, but I didn't know anything about it. But next door, I want to get to the house next door. Windsor bought the house next door, and they turned it into a hotel. They used it for all their employees. There were room numbers. It was a mess. It was noisy. It was used as a hotel. And I want to be a good neighbor, but they weren't good neighbors to me. And I have to express that. It was a hotel. And it was a parking lot, and there were tons of people there that worked at Windsor. They used it not just for their golf pros staying there and chefs. They had their employees staying there. It was a huge, huge mess. And I don't know what the 6-unit thing is going to be, and I hope it's not the same thing. So I'm a little nervous. The residential components, we're not worried about that, I don't think. But we're worried about this other stuff, and there should be covenants to protect us. And that subdivision, we objected that being vacated until some of these things are addressed and straightened out. But this commercial use and the signage out there pushes this use as a commercial use. It's a huge mess right now. But the situation last door, they sold the house finally. And somebody, Mr. Graff, has bought it. And he's redoing, had to redo the house. It was in such bad condition. And it was in my mom's estate. I lived close by because I tried to look after my parents. And I had to buy that house out of the estate, but we couldn't sell it in the estate because it was so messy next door and there were so many problems. People would come and look at the house. No kidding. They would look at the house and say, what's going on next door? It's a hotel. And all the trucks and noise, it sure didn't help us. So I finally bought the house and I'm redoing it. And Mr. Graff bought the other house from Windsor. And now we're fixing things up. But we want a beautiful, pretty neighborhood, and we don't want all this commercial stuff, and I don't want that commercial parking lot, and I don't know anybody that does in the neighborhood. All the people I've talked to are against it. And so we object, and we object to the changing of the subdivision ordinance until this is straight, and that parking lot should be removed from this application. I think the application should be tabled until they can figure out something that's going to address this commercial situation, because it's bad. And I don't know that they're going to get rid of that stuff right away. I don't buy that. I don't really buy that they're going to get rid of that. I mean, you can say whatever you want to. I've been in real estate for a long time, and I've been a real estate investor and owned a lot of cattle ranches. But there's one thing I think about: location, location, location. And having a parking lot across the street doesn't excite me. And having the dumpsters up there and probably fuel, they're probably going to have, they haven't talked about that, but they've got fuel back there to support these trucks and this maintenance thing. They're going to have fuel. And they'll probably have fuel stored there. Or they'll probably they're going to fill lawnmowers. It's dangerous. So we get back to the fire code and what the people are talking about here. He brought the insurance companies are not going to like this. You know, I've already had, it's hard to get insurance as it is. But when you put a commercial parking lot and you have all this commercial usage, listen, the adjusters are going to look at this site right now, and I'm surprised they haven't had troubles. You know, I've had questions about, you know, what's going on around my property. They ask you, even if you have a dog, because it's hard to get insurance, they don't want to be sued. But the insurance companies are very picky right now. And this could tip this thing. And I don't want a parking lot there, a commercial parking lot, which that, like I said, is at a Swan or Duck or a commercial parking lot. Okay. I don't think it's a staff parking lot at all.
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
You're kind of repeating yourself. Can you sum up maybe, please?
Right. We ask you to have this reconsidered, to table this motion, and there should have been notice to people that weren't noticed, and this wasn't done properly. And I respect the people from Windsor, and I've worked with them. I knew that when it was the Groves and Deerfield Groves, and it's great. But I want nice houses and nice surroundings, and I don't want a parking lot, and I don't know anybody around it that wants a parking lot across the street. That's the bottom line. We don't want the parking lot there in this mixed use, because we don't even know what it's going to be. And they're multifamily lots and a fitness center, and then you got the parking lot. It's a mixed use commercial thing, and we oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before,
Wait.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Ryan, I'm a little, tell me about the notice procedures that were sent
Yes,
out.
sir. I was going to point that out. We did send, again, there's a search tool that is available on the property appraiser's website. In fact, the code mandates that we utilize the property appraiser's mailing address and public records. It's very simple. You select the parcels that are involved. You hit plus 300. It draws a polygon. A total of about 104 mailed notices were sent out. The number's a little misleading because if it's a husband and wife, but they're listed separately on the deed, then they both get notice. But it's only this development property, not Windsor. It's not Windsor proper. So if you're across the street from Windsor proper, or if you're only the only two pieces that touch A1A that would get you across the street to the oceanfront lots are the two narrow pieces. So that would only pick up maybe 2 or 3 parcels. But I could show, I mean, I have the mailing list, I have the image of the polygon that it drew. I mean, we take it very seriously. And in addition to that, not required by code, but good practice for communication and something we've done for a long, long time, we have an email group of about 30 or 40 people that we've copied since day one, and to the point where we even provide the plans, provide the documents, provide the comments. As soon as it comes in, we push it right back out to them. So to say there was not proper notice or lack of notice is not accurate.
I think Mr. Farrow needs to get on your,
Yes, I was gonna ask Andy to grab his email address if we could, or,
And Mr. Machado, who's also, that sold them the property, that,
well, why don't you, at the end of this, give him your email address and whoever else you want to get on that list.
I've got their addresses here. I didn't bring their email addresses with me. But I can get them to him.
yeah, we can arrange that.
What's the plan to widen A1A?
I'm not aware of a plan to widen A1A. I know for a fact that either this fiscal year or next fiscal year, there's a plan to resurface A1A, which may include
Yes.
some wider bike lanes, but we're not 4-laning A1A.
What's the story about fuel storage in the parking lot?
There is no fuel storage. In fact, the landscape contractors have been mandated to use electric vehicles and equipment in Windsor, and there's no fuel storage.
There will never be one, is what you're saying.
Correct. No fuel storage.
Mr. Farrow, I'm confused about your hotel story. Was that a Windsor? Was there an illegal hotel operating at Windsor?
In a Windsor house, next door to me.
So what is that?
It
What's
operated
the
for
Windsor
years.
house?
It operated for several years, and then it was sold to Mr. Graff, who wrote you a letter.
Is that part of Windsor? The Windsor house, is that
It
part of
was.
Windsor?
No, Windsor owned a house that was on the oceanfront, and, I don't know a lot about it. The club operations I'm not involved in, but I do know that they did have a couple of employees living there. A hotel is not, something that was ever operated, but they did own the house, and they did house a couple people in there, and then sold the house a couple of years ago.
It was really noisy, I'll tell you. There was a lot of people living there, not
Thank
just
you.
two.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow.
Well, I appreciate your consideration. But,
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just would like to read from the code as far as commercial use, because that issue has come up several times already. Commercial use is limited, including but not limited to, and including not-for-profit organizations, retail, wholesale establishments, motels, hotels, stores, office buildings, restaurants, service stations, garages, laundries, cleaning establishments, for hire services.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
Can I mention one more thing? The land use
Very
plan for
briefly,
the North
please.
Beach is supposed to be 1 acre lots. This is not 1 acre lots. So this will be non-conforming. That's not been brought up. But we understood that was all changed years ago, where the land use was to be 1 unit per acre in that North Beach area. And this will be inconsistent.
Is that correct?
No, Mr. Chair, the underlying land use, which is a comprehensive future land use designation, is L1, which is low-density residential 1 up to 3 units per acre. The corresponding zoning with that land use designation is RS3, which again is residential single-family up to 3 units per acre. The minimum lot size for the RS3 is 12,000 square feet, which is more like a quarter acre. I'm not aware of any one, we do have a RS1, which is roughly a 1 acre zoning district, but that's more usually out in between the sort of the urban and rural interface, sort of as a zoning buffer. But all that being said, the density is actually 0.87 units per acre in this project.
Bill Glenn and I changed this with the county, and I don't know why that's not recorded. A whole group of us went to the county about this 1 acre thing, and we thought it was recorded.
Again, I'm not,
This was years ago.
Sure.
About
Recorded where?
15 years ago.
Recorded where?
This whole North Beach area from 510 all the way to the inlet.
recorded, but you said it was supposed to be recorded. Recorded
It's
where?
supposed to be in the county records, you know, because
County records or county land use
County,
designations?
county land use designations, yes. I'm
Is
surprised.
that,
It's not reflected.
No, sir, again, we have RS1, RS2, and RS3, which all could be within the L1 land use. And if they wanted to do a conventional rezoning, in theory, they could go to one of those districts. But again, the underlying land use is 3 units per acre and roughly quarter-acre lots, which we all know you don't usually yield the full 3 units due to other issues, but they could, in theory, they could easily get to 2.
If it's not that way, it should be changed to 1 acre lots, because this is a fragile coastal strand, and you
That's
shouldn't
something
have
that's
that
not gonna happen
heavy
here
zoning.
tonight.
Excuse
That's
me?
something that won't happen here tonight. We, as a Planning and Zoning Commission, are not going to try to even attempt something like that.
We need to
That
focus
is
on
not the proper process.
We gotta
That would
focus
all
on
have to go through the proper process, and that doesn't start right here.
I'll do some more research. I don't know why this wasn't done. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Farrow. Next? You've been sworn in?
Sworn in?
Did you stand and get sworn in? I think you
No, I
came in
came a little-
late.
yeah, a little late.
Want to swear him in?
And anybody else, just in case?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Well, then we either listen or we read, not both. Name?
Brian Elliott, 3290 Mariners Way. So I also object to the parking lot. And the main reason for that is because it's located very close to the homes.
Excuse me, I'd like to interrupt. Mr. Celli won't provide me a copy of what he gave you, so I'm going to ask you not to look at it. We can't, if I can't see it, you can't see it.
Right, and we
Ms.
can't
Shelley,
have a packet, we can't have a packet given to us and read the packet and listen to people who are talking. Just can't do it.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, that's okay. And so, I think the parking lot's too close to the homes, to be honest with you. And as far as the staff parking lot goes, I see the word staff parking lot, but I've been going in and out of Windsor for like the last 5 to 10 years. I have a landscaping company, and the construction entrance is adjacent to all those houses. And every morning, 7:30, when I pull out of the street, there's a line of trucks, cars, and they're all waiting to get in at 7:30, right at 7:30. And then when you go farther down A1A, there's usually a few more. And you go farther down A1A, and there's usually a few more. And, despite that, basically for landscapers, Windsor's gone electric. So, and a lot that I don't know what the rule is, but it's frowned upon for contractors to park along the roads in Windsor. They like the trucks, trailers, landscapers, electricians, plumbers, and so on park. I'm not sure where they're parking now, but I believe it's in the back area that's going to be developed. Then they're transferred, they move to golf carts with trailers, generally, landscapers do. And I knew a contractor that kept all of his equipment back there. He dumped his debris back there. There was a huge debris pile for years. Basically, then they go about, their business in Windsor, and then back out there, back into the trucks and trailers, and then leave. And so all that stuff is happening behind our homes. And, the development is no problem, a housing development, but that type of operation, and even just the transferring of workers from their trucks, vans to golf carts, I don't think that's, if they want to do that, that's great, but I don't think that's a great location for it, so close to our home. So that's the main reason I object to the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Any questions? Okay, next.
My name is Greg Van Wormer. I live at 3385 Mariners Way, which is also known as 109th Place for everybody. I'll try to be as brief as possible, try not to repeat, as was requested at the beginning. I live basically in what was referred to earlier as one of those people that live in the hole in the donut. So that, and I live right next to, oh, sorry. I've never been a performer, I think. I'm working on it. So, and I live right behind what currently is the parking lot that's in question. So a couple of questions that may sound repetitive, hope they aren't. There's also, I didn't hear any mention between the space between 109 and 110, which is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Turtle Sanctuary path between the two. And I was curious if at some point in time that could be addressed. Because I think that, by the way, I've only been here for 6 months, bought the house, had no idea any of this was going on. So if I'm not up to speed, I soon hope to be. One of the things that occurred to me about that space, and if I may, quoting something from the Archie Carr document, ocean to lagoon, habitats within the refuge span the barrier island from Atlantic Ocean west to the Indian River Lagoon and include beach dunes, coastal scrub, maritime hammock, mangrove swamp. These unique habitats represent some of the most fragile and endangered ecosystems in Florida and in the nation. So one of the things that I am more curious about is what's going to happen to the animals who may now, I think, travel from the ocean to the lagoon through that corridor between 109 and 110. I just don't know. So I'd like someone to address that because I would hate for all of the intentions to go awry because we cut off means of egress for some of the animals that we're trying to save. Whoops, there we go again.
Excuse me, can you pull up a map so we can, and highlight?
If we go
his-
back to the staff computer, Eric, thanks, AV.
Can
Tech.
you highlight what?
Sure.
what
These two narrow parcels are owned by the federal government as part of the Archie Carr National Sea Turtle Refuge, which the Archie Carr is a much bigger, it actually spans into Brevard and Indian River. It is primarily oceanfront property that the Archie Carr Refuge is comprised of, but there is a piece that is west or landward of A1A, but it does not continue through Windsor's property. There wasn't a whole lot of mention of it because I did mention it in the compatibility section of the report, but basically they're just proposing to continue the buffer like they are around the north and the south. I wish I had a more zoomed out. Well, of course, Pelican Island does span the ocean to the river, and it's considerably large. But yes, I guess any animals that are currently using this corridor would be blocked off in theory, but you also have to cross A1A, so.
And
they're not proposing to do any impacts to
right.
this parcel.
No, it's really the corridor between the two areas of water, which were referenced earlier as a unique kind of pathway. And I think most people, especially if you've ever had deer issues, the deer stop at roads, and sometimes they don't. So what's going to happen to these animals that are now trapped between A1A and the new development? Don't know, just curious and have some concern. Referencing the aerial photo before of what exists now for equipment storage and the dumpsters and all of that stuff that we saw before. The new parking lot has 67 spaces is what I heard, and we've all heard the mention of staff and maintenance only. And I did look at the plans pretty closely to see that there are restrictions, I guess you would say, that would make it difficult for 18-wheelers or very large vehicles to park there. That being said, if you're going to build 40 new homes plus the other things that are planned in a 47-acre place, where are you going to stage that? Because right now it's being staged as maintenance predominantly for the Windsor area, and whatever else happens. The person before me mentioned that that's an offloading and staging area because trucks, et cetera, whether you're in Windsor doing a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel or whatever you're doing, the only way you're gonna get a contractor to come to your house is in a golf cart. And the only way they're gonna get in a golf cart is if they move their equipment that they have to use to that. So where is, I'm just curious, I'm kind of in the construction business myself, where is all that gonna be staged as you build 40 homes, a gym, an estuary, a lake, and all that's being planned? I'd like to see where that's gonna happen. I don't think it can happen where the parking lot that is being planned, so where is it gonna happen? That's a point. Also, there was a question earlier, and I could be referring to the wrong plans. I have a set of plans, Windsor North Village PD. Whoops, there we go again. On C708, it talks about the expansion of A1A. That was mentioned earlier as not being planned or thought about. So maybe I have a bad, or I should find a revised set of plans, but it's C701.
Those would be the turn lanes, sir. So there is the turn lanes. So there is a slight widening to accommodate the left turn lane in the middle, as well as the right turn lane on the shoulder. But what I took as widening was 4-laning A1A, which, I mean.
Well, that was my point of confusion, because it kind of looks like it goes from 109 up to what's going to be, I guess, the new proposed road, which is, I guess it's just proposed there up at the top,
Correct.
the other entrance.
There's no name for it, but yeah, Northern Road.
Yeah. So I thought that was a point of clarification. I know we're not doing handouts, so I'm not going to try to hand one out to you. I did make some notes on these plans. I have some keyed notes questions. I'd love to be able to give them to somebody, just say from an architectural point of view, you know, what do the plans speak to? So what would be the process for that?
Are they 11 by 17? Could you?
Oh, yeah, they're just, they're literally
Could you just scan them
keyed
and
notes.
send them to me?
Absolutely,
All right,
no
thank you.
problem.
And then maybe the two of you can schedule a
Sure,
meeting?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yep, I'd be happy to take a meeting whenever you have the opportunity to do so. I guess
So before you leave, make sure he has your contact information.
Sure,
See handy right here.
yep. And I guess in closing, I'm going to read something that's in the Windsor North Village website and brochure. It says, America's leading new urbanism proponents, DPZ Co-Design, have designed the master plan focusing on principles of sustainability, walkability, healthy living, and community values. I couldn't agree with that more, and that's one of the reasons I moved here. I just want to make sure that the existing community is thought of as being part of that equation when the development is being developed. I know I don't pay the HOAs, I know I'm not in Windsor, but I am part of the community at large that embraces them and they're embracing me. So I just want to be thought about in the same way that they're thinking about the people who are going to buy in the new development. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Valmaria? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm quite confused because I hear this term commercial a lot, and I'm trying to figure out where this commercial activity that they're talking about is.
From what I understand, they are referring to the parking area as being commercial. I previously read from the code what the code defines as being commercial.
And that doesn't exist.
That, none of those uses that I went through, hotel, motel, laundry, cleaning, for hire services, anything, gas stations, none of those uses are mentioned in what you have seen here tonight.
Did I clarify it for you, Mark?
No. Can someone explain to me why the people are talking about commercial use?
I think
Their perception.
that what they're saying is that the parking of cars there equates to a commercial use. And I read from the code what the code defines as a commercial use.
I did hear some, equipment storage mentioned. Is that right?
Okay. Yes, 6,000 square feet of equipment
That's
storage.
that little.
The small cutout. Yeah, the way staff has viewed and interpreted this parking area, as well as the several other parking areas that already exist in Windsor, is accessory to a large development. There's an existing fitness center that has parking spaces. There's a clubhouse, there's a town hall, there's a golf course that has parking spaces. Grand Harbor, Point West, they all have parking areas that are for existing uses, golf clubs, moorings, the list goes on. This is a parking area that's accessory to the overall development. If you single out the parking area by itself, I agree, it sounds like that's kind of a round peg in a square hole, but it's part of a larger development, and that's what staff's analysis is based on.
But the people who are objecting to this, do they feel that it's going to get worse if this is approved and developed, or better?
I think the perception is that it's going to get worse. Myself, there will be probably 2 to 3 years of growing pains when the infrastructure is being built and when the homes are being built. But at the end of the day, like I said before, I used the term self-policing. When you have homes, and these are not cheap homes, surrounding the area, the minute a truck is left idling or a 18-wheeler pulls in, you're going to have folks in Windsor that are complaining. And it's by and large seasonal, but there are year-round residents. They're not going to stand for it either.
Hey, name, address?
Hi, Paul Reineke, 3480 110th Place. I'm the.
And you've been sworn in, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I'm sworn in. So, want to point out I'm a 4th-generation Floridian, so I've been here a long time, seen a lot happen, and I think I have a great appreciation for the natural resources here and everything about the area. I had something written, but I'm not going to read it because a lot of the questions have been kind of covered and gone over. I did want to touch on all their points about it kind of being a commercial parking area. I think the problem is that it's not the residents that are using it for parking, it's all the commercial businesses that are going to be in that parking lot waiting for someone to pick them up, to take them somewhere. Where are they going to go to the bathroom? Like, they're going to be there playing their music in their car while they're waiting. I just think those are the kind of disruptions that are going to be seen there because those people don't live there. They're outsiders coming in that don't really care about the people that live there. And I think that's the big concern probably, is all that compiled together is not from people that live in the community. It's outsiders. So I live on 110th Place, which is on the north side. And I wanted to ask about White Mangrove Lane. So it's proposed as a resident-only gated access road. Is that all that's supposed to be, or is that a construction entrance?
It's listed on the plans as a resident-only gated entrance that it's operated, I presume, by RFID or some other, gate operator.
So it's not it won't be a construction, that's not the main construction entrance for the development of the property?
Perhaps during construction, it may be utilized as a construction entrance, but once it's developed, that would be a residential driveway. It's the northernmost driveway, and it wouldn't make sense for everyone to come in at the very north end.
Okay. So my one concern is I don't like the idea of an 8-foot, 825-foot concrete wall from A1A down our whole road all the way to Windsor. It doesn't make sense to me if it's just a residential road that there's an 8-foot, 825-foot cement wall there. I would rather have a 25-foot buffer of plants and not see a cement wall outside my backyard, and just, it's an unnatural barrier in a very natural setting.
If I could, because we've kind of gone back and forth with that one in particular, the wall is proposed to be set 10 feet into the buffer, and at minimum, the shrubs and the understory trees would be put on the outside of the wall, but we would also make every effort to get probably some canopy trees on the outside to soften that wall. But I had other folks that are in your area prefer the wall, so I'm trying to strike a balance.
Well, Elaine and I are the ones that live on that side, and we're opposed it, so I don't know why anyone else would be for it.
Sure.
So is there a way for Mr. Manicki to get that preference to you? I mean, you're.
I'm all ears right now. Wait, I'm sure the developer would be happy to remove it, quite frankly.
We're also listening to
And as well, you know, the other problem with that wall is it runs from A1A to the development. It's 825 feet long. The preserve, the refuge is on the north side of that. So any of the animals that travel southward on there hit a cement wall, an 825-foot cement wall, and then they head to A1A, and then they go out in A1A. So it's really, to me, it's an inconvenience for me, but it's a bigger inconvenience for the animals that are gonna get killed in A1A right there.
We can recommend a condition that the wall not be provided.
But if it's a construction entrance, and
That's a short term.
Correct.
how short a term to build 40 houses?
No control over that.
Is there a proposed
I-
timeline
40
for
houses
these
to
houses
be-
to be built? Is it
Aaron,
over
do you-
10 years? Is it a?
Not the homes. The way that these developments are built is the infrastructure is built essentially all at once. The roads, the utilities, the ponds are dug. It's pretty elaborate, so it's probably gonna be a little longer term than normal. But then the individual sites, each home will be built out individually. In Windsor proper right now, it's very common, these are not small homes, so there's usually a small construction trailer that's either on an adjacent lot or a common area. And I wanted to see if Aaron could, if you guys have identified a construction entrance yet or not, or if we're not there yet. We're not there yet, okay.
I would just like to point out, the developer would be happy to consider removing the wall if
I'm
the staff will
sure they
support it. I
would.
just, you know, that's not,
But
that's not our
if it's a
idea.
construction entrance, I want a wall there. But if it's not, that's the thing here is I don't understand. Is it a residential entrance or is it the construction entrance to build 40 homes? Which could span 10 years or 20 years. or-
transform from one to the other.
Yeah.
So the issue we have right now is that there's a group of people on one side that want the wall, there's a group of people on the other side.
This is
people
the
that live
northern.
on that side of the street
right.
don't want the wall.
This is the northern wall. To clarify, this is
North.
just the northern wall. The
just the
southern wall,
northern
I can assure you,
Yeah. So,
And if it's a construction entrance and there's gonna be all the houses that get built in that neighborhood, all those construction vehicles are going down the residential entrance, then that's a problem. So
you're
I
on
think
the
it should be
fence.
defined if it's, I think it needs to be defined if it's a construction entrance or it's a residential entrance. If it's just to build the first infrastructure and dig the ponds and all that, I get it, but if it's for continuing for everyone to come in to build all those 40 houses over the next 10 years or whenever the lots sell, I think that's a problem.
I think
Okay,
I just
so-
heard that there was no staging area planned at this point, or the construction entrance planned at this point, and so that'll have to be on the next stage, is that right?
correct. Usually at the land development permit, LDP is when the construction entrance is identified. At the risk of handcuffing county staff, we could make a condition that the northernmost driveway not be designated as the construction entrance and the wall be removed.
Well, but
But
that's gonna make all the people on the south end
Right.
complain because here the construction,
Well,
and
again,
traffic is all there.
There is already sorry to be so informal, Mr. Chair. There is a condition for the southern wall to be constructed as early as practical. So the way the LDP would be sort of staged would be that area would be cleared and they would be in for a wall permit, which is a building permit first to come in and pour the footer and install that wall as soon as possible. But yes, welcome to my world.
I'm thoroughly confused about the wall.
Right.
Yep, so. Anything else?
Yeah, I do, but that is the main concern. No wall if it's a residential entrance, but
We're clear.
I would like to know. My next subject is the drainage and the ponds. If you could pull that up, I don't know if I quite understand what's going on there, because basically Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge is a designated National Historic Landmark and a wetland of international importance. And we're talking about draining land that's not drained into the Pelican Island National Refuge. Like the drain pipes that they actually have going into the lagoon are into Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge boundary, into it. Right now, there's ditches that run along a lot of the property. There's actually ditches that run from the refuge into those ditches that connect, and from the plans, it doesn't look like, those don't connect to the freshwater pond. Those look more like they connect to the back, actually behind the saltwater estuary. So I'm a little concerned about how that all works, because you're not draining, this isn't about just the land within Windsor, North Village proper getting drained into those and out. You're talking about 110th Place, Mariners Way, portions of the refuge, all draining into these canals and then draining out into the lagoon.
Aaron, you're gonna have to.
I know it's hard to conceptualize. I've looked at it, I don't know. But if you picture around the outside, behind Mariners Way and 110th Place, there's a ditch that runs all the way along that, and there's a ditch that runs all the way along the north side on the top. And then there's ditches that run from the refuge into those two, and then they connect back in the back.
It might be more clear if we saw what that sub was, that big white area, and what those streets are named, because I kind of get lost.
Good evening, Aaron Bowles, NBV Engineering. I can help try to explain what we're doing. So currently, the subdivisions, 109th, 110th Place, as you said, they drain, the southern 109th drains to an existing swale located to its south. And then it flows to the west and then north along its west property line, all the way up to the, a portion of it flows north to the north property line. And then there's two separate stormwater swales that run to the west and then out to the lagoon. That's currently the way it.
None of them run to the lagoon.
Well, they come, there's a
Currently, none
there's a
of those
culvert
drain
sort
to
of
the
south.
lagoon, so we're talking about nothing draining to the lagoon to now
No,
all of
that's-
that draining to the lagoon.
Yeah, that's okay. So, yeah, so the plans that we have, the historic plans for your subdivisions, show it draining to the north, to the existing swales that are along the north property line, and then when it reaches the northwest corner of the property, it comes south, and there's a culvert that crosses Jungle Trail. We'd be happy to show those to you, and we can, and if there's anything that we're missing, by all means, we're getting ready to get into the full design of it. We can tweak it accordingly, but part of what we're proposing is combining that swale that the preserve to the north utilizes and ours, that's part of our proposal, to better improve the drainage in that area. And there's also a drainage swale for the south property line that runs directly due west into the lagoon through some existing culverts and swales. So we're going to be improving those and combining them. Currently, the south subdivision, 109th, is supposed to have a retention area that drains and retains its own stormwater and then drains to the north, but currently that swale is not in place that we had seen from the survey or from field visits, and it's just all draining onto the Windsor property, which is fine. We're gonna, Mark's agreed to go ahead and combine with ours and provide one combined drainage system to collect it. So that's the gist of it. This is draining up here like this, and it drains right around in there.
So these
This currently drains, there's a ditch that goes through here, and
and
it's
these
being combined.
ditches, where do they drain?
This drains right to here, and there's a
So it
culvert
doesn't go
right
into
there.
the stormwater the saltwater estuary?
What it will be, because right now it currently drains through here and out a culvert. And so what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be maintaining that same drainage pattern and then going into the saltwater estuary where this saltwater estuary is combined. And we're gonna be installing a larger culvert that connects the two.
Okay. Just because when it rains and stormwater goes in, all the stormwater is being directed right to where the pipe is going to the estuary, into the saltwater estuary. So you're basically just draining that water.
Correct. Instead of, right now, it sort of comes at the northwest corner and then goes south, and you can almost see a little culvert. That's sort of where it is. And this proposed estuary is gonna be maintaining that approximate same connection. And this will be, instead of
I
going
would just
directly.
recommend looking at that, because
Yeah.
I don't think that's actual factual, because those ditches do not drain into the lagoon currently.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
we can't see what you're pointing to.
And I understand. I'm showing him, 'cause, yeah,
I
he's-
suggest,
I don't have a-
suggest that the two of you get together.
Yeah, and that's not, and if there's something, by all means, that you know that we don't see when we,
Yeah.
we send the
Those
field out and
ditches fill with
surveyors.
water when it rains, the ditches fill with water,
Yeah.
they don't drain
share information and you two work it out.
That's not a problem.
Aaron, is it fair to say that probably some of the historical drainage for some of these older subdivisions hasn't been kept up and
Oh,
therefore?
100%. Yeah, there's a pretty detailed drainage system that these subdivisions have, but
don't actually.
it's sort of long gone, so it just,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't connect though. I promise you it does not connect right now. I'm gonna read a letter here from the Marine Resource Council. David Boto wrote it, he wasn't able to be here. The Marine Resource Council, MRC, is a not-for-profit organization of 700 members with headquarters in Palm Bay and dedicated for 30 years to the restoration and preservation of the Indian River Lagoon. We remain concerned that the latest site plan for the subject development continues to pose a polluting risk to our impaired Indian River Lagoon. The current plan is an improvement in critical shoreline properties, but area stormwater runoff management remains essentially unknown. Rules require that the developer must provide reasonable assurance that post-development stormwater runoff loads will be less than for impaired waterway or equal to that of pre-development. In addition, the Basin Management Action Plan states that TMDL load targets, I'm not sure what that is, are based on existing conditions and do not consider new or planned development. Local authority must adjust load targets to reflect new and planned development. We suggest that the developer be tasked to provide data such as current runoff volume and treatment, as well as estimating calculations for post-development conditions in order to enable evaluation of runoff impact to the Indian River Lagoon. We appreciate the diligence of the Indian River County has shown in considering the proposed Windsor development and offer our help as you continue.
And who is that addressed to?
I'm not totally sure. It was forwarded to me from him, and he couldn't be here.
Or who needs to act on that?
Those things are being done.
What?
Those things are being, that's exactly how a stormwater management plan is presented and approved. So those things are being done. So thank you for bringing that attention, but that's exactly what happens.
So when it says, I do have a question. So it says the current plan is an improvement in critical shoreline properties, but area stormwater runoff management remains essentially unknown. Rules require that developer must provide reasonable assurance that post-development stormwater runoff loads will be less than or equal to that of pre-development. So if there is no stormwater runoff into the lagoon now, how can it be equal to or better? I live there, I know.
And they're gonna have to
I
go
fish
through all
there,
the.
I live there, there's no pipe
And they're gonna have to
running,
go
there's
through
no
all the
flow,
proper agencies to get the permission to actually do that also. So that's not something that we're gonna
Okay.
approve here.
No,
That's gonna be approved by the alphabet agencies that
Okay.
control the protection of the lagoon,
All right,
not by us.
it just made,
And that'll be part of their overall permit.
that's all I have for you. Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
just to clarify again, this is a conceptual and preliminary, this basically only approves the horizontal, so to speak, as well as the land entitlements. But the detailed plans, or the land development plan, stormwater, which are volumes thick of reporting and model running and a lot of survey work, so we're not there yet. They don't want to expend that time, money, and effort until they have their entitlements.
Still in the preliminary stage.
Correct.
Anyone else?
Could I get another minute?
Is it a new question?
You've already had your chance, but is it different than what you've already said?
What has been said already?
And what has been said already?
No, I was actually
Okay.
reiterate the insurance question because we talked a lot about everything.
Yep. All right.
May I just make one clarification?
Sure.
Again, you've already talked a lot. If this is different than anything that's been said, go ahead.
It's just a clarification of something that I need an answer on. It seems like the parking lot has to be a parking lot for commercial vehicles so they can get on the golf carts. If there was a requirement, I didn't know that. If there's a requirement that Windsor makes people get on golf carts, then this will have to be a commercial lot.
So this is not new. This has been
Well, I
discussed.
didn't know that, but it's.
Yep. Anyone else?
Excuse me, I didn't say I swear, but I do, and I'd like to just answer.
I can't hear you. Come to a microphone.
And be sworn in.
You need to be sworn by the
Yes.
clerk, please.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Adele Chelly. I live on the...
Eddie?
Chelly.
Shelley?
Chelly.
C-E-L-L-Y. Aye.
Aye. Cello with an I in the end, you said. I live in the very corner of the cul-de-sac in Turtle Cove. And I think just to maybe articulate what you keep hearing them say, commercial, it's gonna be commercial run there. What it is that they have their golf carts, their landscape people. They have a landscape company that goes through their neighborhood. And they put their loud, noisy garbage bins or whatever you want to call it. So maybe you're saying it's not commercial, but it's not, there's not a Mercedes-Benz being parked over there, okay? And I think what, you guys have a lot of factors that you have to look at. We're just asking you to look at the human factor, us, that, you know, I've lived there almost 9 years. I hear firsthand what the landscaping and the other maintenance workers are doing. Revving their engines because they get off at work at 4 o'clock and they're doing donuts out there. It looks good on paper, but when you actually live there and have to hear the noise, or they come in, like somebody else said, with the loud bass music because they're waiting for, 4 o'clock to come so they can get off from work. It's just that we're asking you to realize that people live there and you have your rules and regulations. And even though it says that, I think Ryan said that they did more than, what was it, the LDR, the requirements. For us to have a peaceful existence, to have that noise there all the time, it takes away our peaceful existence. So we're just asking you to realize there's human beings that live there. Really, would you want to have this in your backyard? That's all we're asking you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Is the proposed parking lot for the landscapers?
So maintenance staff, which would include some landscapers, contractors, Windsor employees, they'll all use that lot. There's 67 spaces in there, and so, but it's for light vehicles, it's not for 18-wheelers. And so that's what it's for.
And is that a code enforcement issue? I know we've heard some complaints about the effectiveness of code enforcement, but is that what we're talking about here?
We have our noise ordinance, we have certain other countywide rules and regulations, but,
Again, let me read from the code as far as the definition of a commercial vehicle. One that has a gross vehicle weight of 15,000 pounds, a length of 23 feet, a height of 9 feet, except for recreational vehicles. So are any of those type of vehicles going to be parked in that parking lot?
I would say no.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
It seems to me that this development and this PD is going to resolve a lot of the problems that are existing right now with the noise, the storage, the trash cans, that's no longer going to be here because you have residential right beside this parking lot. I see 6 lots going in. Now, I understand that this is going to be done in 2 phases. And it looks like some of that's the second phase. So is this going to continue on in that second phase area until you've built some of those homes and done the next area? Or is that all going to stop? You said that those particular landscape companies and those activities, you said, are going to be abated within 30 days or at 30 days. So my question is, I hear these people loud and clear about, what's going on and what's gone on in the past. And I know that just as a concern for their citizens and to understand what's going on, it seems like you're going to be eliminating all of that in the very near future so that some of these people won't have that going on in their backyard anymore. Am I correct with that assumption?
That is correct.
Thank you. No other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on
All right.
that. in the event that things don't change, Ryan, what
Enforcement
is the recourse?
And I can speak to that. Andy Sapchak, Director of Planning and Development Services. We do have a continuing order issued by the Code Enforcement Board to take immediate action if there's any ongoing violations. We can start a fine on day one and continue that fine every day for $250 until that resolution is, until it's resolved.
So there's something in place already at this time?
There's an existing order already in place, right?
Thank you, Sandy.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm reading this, and all we're really doing here is recommending to the Board of County Commissioners that we take the next step in terms of the rezoning and conceptual PUD. So maybe it'd be a good idea, Ryan, if you could explain to the audience what the next step is.
Happily. So you all are tasked with making a recommendation, and typically that is approve with staff recommended conditions, approve with either additional or modified conditions. I do want to revisit the northern wall one final time before we make a final motion, or deny. A vote for denial does not stop the project from proceeding onto the board. There will be a whole second public hearing, a whole round of mailed notice, reposting of signs, and legal ads for the Board of County Commissioners. I anticipated that this would be a little bit of a challenging project, so I'm not going to schedule it immediately. Tomorrow would be the deadline to try to schedule it for the second meeting for the BCC. I'm aiming to actually, hopefully, schedule it December 5th, which is the first meeting in December. But all of the notice, all of the things that occurred tonight would reoccur for the board, but you all are simply making a recommendation.
To the Board of
To the Board of County Commissioners.
Yep, yep.
And just like you said, if we turned it down here today, it's still going to the Board of County Commissioners. There's an
Correct.
appeal there, and that's where they're going to go.
Correct.
Anything else? Close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I think it would be best if you allow staff to coordinate with the developer and Mr. Rennick to get a final determination on the north wall, and staff will either modify or keep their recommended conditions to that effect. I'd rather not try to tweak conditions on the fly on the dais. It gets a little messy. But that's purely my wishes. You all are free to do.
So we can make our decision, and when it goes to
Between now and when it goes to the board, staff will make a final recommendation on that northern wall.
So we don't have to.
You don't have, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
But I'd rather not legislate from the dais. I'd rather just let us work through it in the next 30 some odd days.
Okay.
And then it may ultimately, what would happen is, I'm hoping if staff, or if the P&Z recommends staff conditions, we'll either leave it as is if we agree to keep the wall, or we'll tweak that condition and we'll note that in the BCC report.
Commissioners, are we talked out, or is there more on this side? Nothing on this side? Anything on this side?
My only last comment would be that I have read section 911.20 entitled the North Barrier Island Corridor Special Development Regulation, and I can find nothing as far as minimum lot sizes.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve with the staff recommendations and also the allowance for staff to modify the wall.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Any commissioner matters? None? Any planning matters?
Mr. Chair, we discussed that, I'm hoping not, well, for selfish reasons, but also because we don't really have anything that's looking to make the first meeting in November. It's actually a short turnaround. The way the dates fall, next week would be the packet week. And so we're hoping not to have that meeting. I understand that you and Todd, the vice chair, Or both?
What meeting are you talking about?
I'm hoping not to hold the November meeting.
No November?
Correct.
Okay,
And we may ultimately have that December meeting. And again, if that's the case, Bill, Dr. Day and Todd are both going to be out of town, so we'll have to elect a chairman of the night, so to speak.
That's fine.
Okay. So we'll let you know for sure, one, if the November meeting's canceled, and two, if we are going to have the December meeting.
excellent, excellent. Attorney matters?
None, sir.
Excellent, we're adjourned.